Hey everyone, it's Tuesday, October the 2nd, and it's great to have you guys back on Boxmining. I really wanted to update you guys on the latest news on the cryptocurrency market. So we're going to get straight into it with the market analysis. We're going to have Shapeshift. They're going to talk about why they're fighting back against the WSJ because honestly, with mainstream media, they're going a little bit too far in spreading the FUD. We also have Bitmex's new ICO report, and a lot of people have been talking about that. I'm going to weigh in on some contrarian views as well. We also have Ripple's xRapid. It's going live today. And of course, finally, we're going to have the discussion as well about the SEC and the Bitcoin ETF. A lot of people were wondering what's happening. I bet a lot of people set alarm clocks for September the 30th. And well, it's been delayed. So we're going to talk about what that means for the future as well. And of course, everything covered here is my personal opinion, not financial advice. And if you like daily updates, smash up that like button and of course subscribe to this channel as well. So let's get straight into the cryptocurrency markets. Well, not much is really happening on the market front. We're still at $222 billion on market cap. And here's the current discussion right now. So if you look at the one-day chart for Bitcoin, and we look at Bitcoin because it's the biggest mover. Well, here you see the wedge formation forming. You see that we constantly have resistance at around 6,000 to $5,800. That's what the line here is for. And we see that each time over from January this year to right now, the peaks are decreasing in its value. So we have what is really what people are calling this wedge formation here. And I've looked at a lot of technical analysis over this weekend, and it's kind of funny because in this situation, a lot of people are predicting that we're going to break this triangle. But the biggest issue, of course, is that there's a disagreement between which way we're going to break it. Are we going to go downwards or upwards? You see, a lot of people who like this kind of pattern analysis, they say that towards the end of the year, November, December months, crypto has had usually breakouts. That's the same thing happened last year. If you look at this time last year, well, that's a huge upward arrow. The issue with taking this kind of seasonal trends in mind is that Bitcoin, the whole ecosystem has dramatically changed over the past year or so. You see, over the past few years, the people who are in this space are very different. A lot of libertarians were there back in the day in 2012, 2013, but now we're replaced with a lot of different speculators and even institutional investors. So that being said, taking in this kind of seasonal change, I think we definitely need to take that with a grain of salt. I don't believe it's valid to take in seasonal changes and seasonal trends because our data set is just too small and our ecosystem is changing largely as a whole. So personally, I don't view very strongly with that argument. I personally think that in the long term, that's where my personal goals are to go for. In the long term, Bitcoin has a huge amount of value, which is still unrealized. So I'm very, very bullish on the long term. But in terms of short-term technical analysis, I think in this current situation right now, it can 50-50 swing either way. Let's move on to the first item of news, which is the WSJ, Wall Street Journal's attack on Shapeshift and the crypto ecosystem. Basically saying, oh, around $80 million was kind of laundered from a Ponzi scheme, was laundered through Shapeshift, and WSG conducted this thorough research on it. And this is a trend that we've been seeing in the news a lot. This allegation that cryptos used for illicit purposes, for money laundering, for drugs, etc., etc. It's interesting to see the counter argument of this. This is being posted by Eric Voorhees of Shapeshift. And what he said and what is being put out bare for us to see is that the Wall Street Journal purposely omitted information, relevant information. More importantly, they over-categorize. They really don't know how blockchain works. What we can take from this is that the journals themselves, they're under a lot of pressure to write articles like this to kind of slander crypto. It's been an ongoing theme that they are pretty happy with perpetuating this theory. But in actual fact, if you look at actual evidence and actual amount money laundered, we need look no further than the big banks. For example, if you look at one of the reports, and this is something that HSBC has admitted to do, which is that they have admitted and apologized for laundering $7 billion of Mexican cartel money into US bank operations. So this is a clear case where we need to really distinguish what's happening on the media side, the slander side, and also what's really happening behind the scenes. The fact is that whilst we're in this new period, blockchain offers an unprecedented amount of transparency, especially if you're doing transactions on Bitcoin. We can track exactly where funds are going and coming from. And this actually improves on the financial system, so we don't have situations like this. Next up, I really want to quickly discuss this article published by Bitmex, because this was hitting out the news quite recently, and a lot of discussion was being discussed on my Telegram channel. And if you guys haven't joined my Telegram channel, I'll put a link down below, but it's a really amazing place to discuss the latest trends, analysis that you guys have, and just discuss together as a community. So I highly recommend that you guys join it. But we're discussing yesterday how valid this analysis is, because this is kind of contrary to an earlier report. So this report was mainly concluding that, well, ICO treasury accounts have a much lower level exposure to the price of Ethereum than many have thought. The ICO projects or teams essentially made out like bandits, at least with respect to Ethereum. I love how they concluded here. And the final conclusion is that however, we believe that we have shown that the panic sell thesis is either false or will only occur to a lesser extent than some will expect. This is actually quite separate to actual findings, other findings by DR, that initial coin offering treasury balances, there's still a huge amount being kept by various projects like DigitXDAO, Bolin, Polkadot, Status, Aragon. They still have a huge amount of Ethereum that's kept, and there's still a potential that they'll sell off. So I don't want to cause a fear here. This is actually a Bitmex article trying to release the FUD. To actually relieve the FUD rather. But what I want to say here is it's important to have a skeptical eye and not just read information for the sake of reading information, but even going into that data as well. What was really important and not really highlighted here is that during the months of May, June, July, and August, the projects have overall just held. The total amount of Ethereum holdings has kept consistent despite the price of Ethereum dropping. So in that sense, there's still a potential to sell off. Okay, so I don't want to say and make us feel like, oh, everything that they're not being exposed. There's still a 400 million exposure, 400 million Ethereum held by ICOs, and that could potentially drastically move the market, even though that's not a big in terms of overall Ethereum. But if that moved in the markets in a short amount of time, that's for sure going to impact the Ethereum price. But what I'm trying to say here is that they really had strong hands. If you look at it, in fact, during July, when Ethereum prices dropped, the holdings amount actually kind of increased here. So take data as you want, but definitely take a look at the data. And I definitely feel like the conclusion might not be the same, because they might be motivated to increase the price of Ethereum after they flooded it like crazy a few months ago. What's important is that we ourselves, we understand the data being presented to us, and we can make our own conclusions. Next up, we got Ripple, the coin, this highly controversial coin that some people really love and some people really don't love. But let's discuss what's important here, which is the fact of the deployment of xRapid. And why are all Ripple fans loving xRapid is because xRapid actually uses the native currency XRP. My personal view is that Ripple has a lot of information about bank partnerships and a lot of positive news information. And I really want to thank them for pushing out crypto and getting people and becoming a gateway to entry to crypto. But at the same time, if you guys are in this for a long term, do your research on what XRP is used for in the system. And even in the case of xRapid, why is there a need for people to hodl onto it? Because if it's just a transient state, that is just a utility case, and well, there's no real need to hodl onto a currency like this. All right, the last topic is this little discussion on the Bitcoin ETF, because I think a lot of people set alarm clocks for September 30th when the SEC was supposed to reach a conclusion on the VanEck Solid X application. And this was the biggest one. This is the one that was backed by the CTFC. So what was the issue here? The issue was that on September 21st, so around 2 weeks ago, the SEC delayed it again. So this is a constant delay of Bitcoin ETFs. And that's why in many instances, people are getting so frustrated in this situation, right? Because technically the SEC had sufficient and a lot of time to allow people to comment. But what they're trying to delay, on the premise for delaying, is that right now they are inviting more feedback. So this whole situation of the SEC and Bitcoin is that what I feel is like they're uncertain and they still don't want to be blamed. I think the key here is they don't want to be blamed for a situation where if Bitcoin prices fall, they're now culprit, and because they gave the kind of rubber stamp of and because they gave the rubber stamp of approval via the form of an ETF, they can't take that back. So by having more comments, then they can be free from blame in the future. It's just protecting your ass, really. So at the end of the day, this is what I feel about regulation. It's clear that in these cases, regulation just isn't enough. I mean, right now, it's kind of like you've seen by two incidents, even with the whole incident with Elon Musk and Tesla, you can see that regulation can only help people so far. And the only thing that's going to protect people that are investing their money is education. That's the sad fact. No amount of regulation can prevent stupidity. And if the SEC just wants, and if they're just weak and they want someone to lay the finger on and blame if things go wrong, be them. We as a community as a whole, we're educated enough to know that the power of crypto is if you actually hold it. The power of Bitcoin is if you hold it, because then you have complete control over that asset, and that's what makes it powerful. So those are my ending notes. Of course, guys, agree with me, disagree with me, I would love to hear your comments in the comment section below. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you guys like this episode, do hit the subscribe button and do share it with your friends. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys next time.